It's time for more Manifesting Original Rich Bitch Experiences. I'm your host, Ava Beilke. Welcome back to the More Pod. I hope you are doing well. It is currently summertime, and to me, that means summer vacation. I don't know about you, but in the summertime, I always feel very inspired to go on a trip. And I don't know if it's just because of like old programming, patterning, where it's like you go to school and then you have summer off, or if it's just like the nice weather that really kind of motivates me to want to get out and explore. But for the last few summers, I have been trying to make it a point to go somewhere new. And not necessarily in like the Euro summer sense, but more of like a domestic US travel summer. And so, for example, I think a few years ago when I started this, I went to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Last summer, I went to New Orleans. And now this summer, I just recently got back from a trip to Portland, Oregon. So that means we have a travel talk for today. I'm super excited to share my experience with you in Portland. It was a great time. It was my first time there. And it was really nice. Like, it was a nice summer vibe. So whether you are planning a trip to Portland, it's somewhere you want to go, it's on your list, or maybe you're just daydreaming about it, I hope that this episode gives you something to think about, or just a little general inspiration to get out and travel to somewhere new, near or far this summer, to really just mix it up, like get out of your kind of routines, patterns, and just see something new. So let's get into it. I wanted to take this trip, and for me, this reason of trip was really just purely leisure. Like, I had nothing particular in mind. There was no business aspects to it, which is really nice. Just a nice little trip. And I've been wanting to go to Portland for a while. Like I said, it's been on my list for many years, but it never quite worked out in the past. And this has me sort of thinking about like accessibility, if you will. Like when I was living in Minnesota, for example, a weekend trip to Portland felt kind of out of reach, right? Because it was like just far enough away and like 2 hours time zone back that it just didn't feel conducive to a weekend trip. And so I do find it interesting to think about like, where we live and then kind of where we travel from there, just based on proximity. But now that I live in Los Angeles, Portland, Oregon felt a little more accessible in the sense that it's on the West Coast, we're in the same Pacific time zone. And that just makes things a lot easier, especially if you're going for a short amount of time. And the other thing that I really wanted to do in Portland was to visit some friends. So I have some really good friends that moved to Portland many years ago, and I had just not made it out to visit them. And I think part of the reason is like they are always really good at like coming home to visit. So I saw them quite frequently, but I'm happy that I was finally able to kind of make that trip, take a look at their new life that they've built out there in Portland, and explore a new city. So that was my reason for trip, mostly leisure, and again, seeing somewhere new. And I have been just in this pattern of really trying to make like a summer vacation happen, which is something that I think we should all do, especially as adults, because why not? When it comes to getting there, like the journey of me getting to Portland, to be honest with you, it was a fucking nightmare. Like, it should have been so easy, and it was so not. And this is something that I have heard from a lot of friends who are traveling this summer. It's not cute. Like, multiple layovers, multiple missed flights, travel delays for no reason. To give you the highest level summary, what should have been like a 3-hour trip took me 20 hours. And now if you're wondering how exactly that happened, I will let you know. So in Los Angeles, you can obviously fly in and out of LAX. And that is like the main Huge international airport, multi-terminal, it's like a zoo basically. But the thing is, like, you don't really want to fly out of LAX if you can help it, because it's a production. So alternatively, there is the Burbank airport, which is smaller on the east side, and that's much closer to where I live. Obviously, challenges with smaller airports, not as many direct flights, but I figured my thought process in all of this was that I could live with like a one-stop flight if it meant that I didn't have to go to LAX. Okay. It meant that I could just drive up to their Burbank airport. It's a cute little spot, teeny tiny. Like, you could walk the whole thing like 5 times over in 10 minutes. Okay. I thought the trade-off of taking a one-stop flight was going to be worth it. It was not. So my flight from Burbank left, I kid you not, maybe 15 minutes late. And my changeover was supposed to be in Salt Lake City. Now, I don't know what it is about Salt Lake City. I have had multiple negative experiences there. I don't know if it's like the Mormons, the lack of caffeine and alcohol, or if it's just the fact that it is a city on my Uranus line. And Uranus is the planet of disruption. And so I say all of that to say locational astrology is real. Would you know it? When I land into Salt Lake City, I have already missed my connecting flight. But it was a situation where before our plane even landed, they had rebooked my flight. But the rebooking included 2 additional planes. So instead of flying from Salt Lake City to Portland, I was routed to Seattle and then from Seattle to Portland. Now, get on the flight. I have to wait like 3 extra hours in Salt Lake City Airport. Finally get on the flight, sit on the tarmac for an extra hour to fly to Seattle. So the time I get to Seattle, I have now missed my flight to Portland. And I kid you not, I left Los Angeles that day at like 1:45 in the afternoon. I land in Seattle at midnight. Okay, midnight. And that plane was also late. So I missed my connection to Portland. And the next flight out wasn't until the morning, okay? Now we're in an overnight situation. I don't know about you, but I am not going to be sleeping in an airport. So I fought for my life to get a free night compensated by the airline at the nearest airport hotel, okay? And you might be thinking like, wow, this is why you don't fly budget airlines. I was not flying budget airline. This all happened on Delta. I'm so sorry to say. Like, for the first time in my life, and you know how hard I ride for Delta. For the first time in my life, like, I've had just the worst flight experience. But get to the Seattle Airport Hotel, have enough time for like a 3-hour nap and a shower, get back on the shuttle, get back to the Seattle Airport, and then get on my flight to Portland the next morning. And Delta knew I was pissed, right? Like, they're like, we've seen what we're putting her through. So I did get a first class upgrade on my segment from Seattle to Portland, but that segment is like a 40-minute flight. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, at least I can take the edge off with a mimosa, right? They were not serving beverages on the flight. So honestly, the worst travel experience I've had in like to date of all time, probably. It took me over 20 hours to get from LA to Portland. I missed an entire evening of my like long weekend trip. And the worst part is like the airlines don't care. Like the fact that I had to fight to get a compensated overnight, like at the airport hotel, mind you, is crazy to me. The fact that you could book one flight and pay like a certain amount of money because it's just a one stop versus like paying a cheaper rate for like whatever flight path they eventually put me on, also crazy. They would not compensate me because I consumed all of the legs of the flight. And I'm like, what else was I supposed to do? Needless to say, when I touched down in Portland, I needed a vibe check. I needed an aura cleanse. I needed an attitude adjustment. I went straight to the Rose Garden. I went straight to the Rose Garden to cleanse my soul. And after about 3 hours in the Rose Garden, I felt better. I felt better, and at that point, I could finally sort of settle into a cute little weekend summer vacation in Portland. So I have heard this from so many friends. I don't know if you've experienced a terrible flight this summer, but this whole delay situation, the rebooking, the multiple flights, the multiple legs, it really just is a reminder that book the nonstop flight at all costs. At all costs. I don't care if it's $1, $2, $3, $4, $500 more. Time is money. Time is money. Book the nonstop flight every single time. And if you have to go to LAX and not a cute little side quest airport, maybe that's another learning lesson here. But it's just not been a good time to fly. It has not been a good time to fly. But moving on, when it comes to where to stay in Portland, I had never been here before, and so I did spend a lot of time sort of looking at the map. And I was like, well, they've got the river that kind of runs through the middle. Do I go on the east side? Do I go on the west side? It doesn't matter. I really wasn't sure. And so my thought process for deciding where to stay, it basically was I see a lot of hotels downtown. So typically, I love to stay at hotels that I've been to before that have multiple locations because I feel like you can kind of get a vibe. Now, there wasn't a hotel that I initially booked for my stay in Portland because I love the brand so much. But I had 2 different people tell me not to stay there based on the street it was located on. So apparently, the street called Burnside in downtown Portland is kind of an equivalent to Skid Row situation, unfortunately. So if you are traveling alone or just kind of unfamiliar with the area, potentially avoid that situation. Like I said, my whole goal was to have a relaxing, peaceful time. And so I decided to cancel that reservation and rebook a second option. Here's where things kind of got dicey. I could not for the life of me figure out where to stay. One of my friends recommended the Heathman, and I was like, why does the Heathman sound familiar? Then I resorted to one of my favorite books, which is basically a compilation of everything Anthony Bourdain has ever said about anywhere in the world that he's been. I thumb open to the Portland travel section. And the first thing that I see is a headline that says, "Sleep at the Haunted Heathman." Sleep at the Haunted Heathman. And I'll just read you a little bit of what he had to say about this hotel. Quote, "At first glance, the Heathman Hotel is a stylish yet warm, comfortingly luxurious lodging. But closer inspection reveals a grisly and evil history of possible haunting. According to local lore, a guest from the hotel's 8th floor sometime in the 1930s, supposedly haunting every room on his way down, which is to say those that end in O3. There have been reports of furniture belongings being rearranged with no clear explanation or glasses of water disappearing and prescription drugs going missing." Okay. So I have stayed at a haunted hotel before, and it is not an experience that I want to replicate. And I'm thinking, what are the chances, right? What are the chances that I book myself a stay at the haunted Heathman and get away like unscathed, essentially. But something in me told me just to do it. And I know that sounds crazy, but I did book myself a stay at the haunted Heathman. Now, unlike last summer when I went to New Orleans and had a terrifying paranormal experience, I'm happy to report that I personally did not experience anything haunted at this hotel, which was a relief. But you better believe when I called that hotel to say that I was running a day late, I specifically asked for a room that did not end in 03. So every time I travel, I love to do a bit of an ode to Anthony Bourdain if I can, whether that's going to a restaurant he's been at, a bar, whatever it may be. I always try to pick at least one of his recommendations in a new city when I'm traveling. And so this time around, for my experience in Portland, that tribute to Bourdain, if you will, was staying at the Heathman. The hotel itself was honestly nothing remarkable. Like, it was a very clean hotel. Like, the staff was very friendly. It's decently located downtown. It felt very easy, but there's nothing like overly impressive about it. But again, like thinking about my past hotel experiences, I'm like, I think that's a good thing. So I would recommend it if you are looking for a hotel to stay at downtown, just to make sure that you don't stay in one of the rooms that end in 03 if that's not the vibe you are wanting to curate. Now, when it comes to the agenda for the weekend, I really wanted to get like a good kind of first experience in the city. Wine bars, gardens, restaurants, a little trip to the coast. I feel like for only having 3 days in Portland, I was able to cover a lot of ground. And so I want to take you through a play-by-play. Basically, the daily itinerary that I adhered to and give you the highlights for things to do, places to drink wine, places to eat food, and some really good views. So on the Friday, like I said, my first order of business was going to the Rose Garden. Now, Portland has a really gorgeous, I think it's like the International Test Rose Garden, where they basically kind of grow all of these new varietals of roses and they like see how they do. And it was a stunning garden. It was actually much larger than the Rose Garden in Minneapolis, which is my favorite place in the world, which is like right near where I grew up. The Portland Rose Garden has 600 varieties of roses, 10,000 plantings. So really, really pretty. My favorite rose in the garden was called the Cherry Parfait. They were these really big blooms and they were like white kind of towards like the center of the petal, and then they were red on the edges of the petal, and they were so pretty. And honestly, Cherry Parfait was like the perfect name for this flower. But spent a lot of time in the garden, walking around, smelling the roses, raising my vibe. Highly recommend. And right next door to the Rose Garden is actually the Japanese Garden, and I went to that one as well. The Japanese Garden was also stunning. It felt a bit more like a museum, whereas the Rose Garden felt like more of kind of like just like a public garden. And I will say, the Rose Garden is free. And the Japanese Garden was $22. So, if that sways your decision one way or the other, there you go. But they're right next to each other, so why not, right? And the Japanese Garden, lots of different sort of garden sets, if you will. And I would say my favorite part about the Japanese Garden is it has a really stunning view of Mount Hood. And so there is a point in the Japanese Garden where you get like this really, really pretty view of the mountain. And I did like that quite a bit. But honestly, the Rose Garden, for free. Like, you can't beat it. So highly recommend. Later on Friday, I met up with my friend Hannah, and we went to Mississippi Avenue and basically just sort of strolled the shops on the street. And what I noticed is there's a lot of just sort of like streets like this, where they're almost like a destination. You've got your vintage shops, you've got your restaurants, you've got your little bars, like they're all kind of in these sections. And it had like a really nice kind of like a hometown vibe, almost like a small town vibe, but very like neighborhood friendly. And so one of the places that I loved on Mississippi Ave was a vintage shop called Dust Bunny. Dust Bunny Vintage. They had a really nice curated selection of clothing. A lot of 90s inspired, which I love. A lot of kind of like 2000s as well. I did find a really cute 90s skirt that I ended up getting. It's like a gray skirt and it has black velvet flowers on it. It's almost perfect. It needs a slight alteration, and I do want to add a zipper to it. But you know what? It was a good find. I'm looking forward to wearing it. I'm looking forward to styling it. And this was a really cute shop. But I would say my highlight of Friday was the dinner that I had with friends at a wine bar called Heavenly Creatures. This place is so pretty. It is whimsy. It's almost like a tourist sort of dream. There's a lot of florals, like dried flowers and fresh flowers. They have gorgeous like tapered candlesticks and like melted wax. They've got just like the bar top was like nice marble. The tables were like this super cute pink palazzo stone. Like, if I were to design my own bar, it would look exactly like this one. And it just lent itself to just such a nice, like cozy, but luxurious, but welcoming vibe. This place was like, I was in my element. We had a lovely meal outside. If I'm being honest, I can't recall exactly everything that we had, but I'm going to do my best. They have a rotating menu of both wine and food, but I think something they have all the time, which you need to have, is the focaccia bread. So good. It's grilled. It comes with butter. They have like a bone marrow butter situation. Really, really nice. The meal opened up with like a little glass of bubbles, which I always love. We had multiple courses of food, a bottle of French white, a bottle of French red, and one of the dishes I do remember was like a glazed short rib, which was incredible. But honestly, I think the fact that like I couldn't even tell you the details just speaks to the experience itself. Like, it was a very sort of like transported in time experience where you can kind of just walk in somewhere, forget about like anything that's been like stressing you up to that point, and just like leaning into just enjoying food, like breaking bread, like having wine with friends. A really, really nice experience. And so Heavenly Creatures, definitely at the top of my list. And I would say that this is a must-see, a must-stop if you find yourself in Portland. The next day, Saturday, was also a super fun day. This might have been my favorite just day in general. It started off really strong. We went to the Saturday market. And the Saturday market, there's actually a couple of markets that happen on the weekends downtown in Portland. There's a Saturday market, which is like the Makers Market. And then they also have a great farmers market, which I think is on Sundays. But the Saturday market was really nice. It's right along the river. There's tons of vendors there and a lot of unique things. There was a lot of jewelry, candles, scents, pottery, like natural bug repellent, which I definitely bought. There was a stand. There's a woman making smudge sticks, with like sage and other things bundled in them. Also bought some of that. But just like a really cool experience, a lot of variety, definitely a lot bigger than I was expecting. And also just a lot of really interesting things to look at. So I believe that happens every Saturday in season, so like during the summer months. And that was like a really just kind of fun way to start the day. It was also like Fleet Week while I was there. So there were like some huge kind of ships. They looked like ships from movie sets, but I guess they're real. There was huge ships that were kind of docked along the river as well. So there was a lot going on. But the market and the Fleet Week, honestly, made for like a very fun kind of experience to start off the day. But I will say the highlight of the Saturday for me was definitely the wine bar crawl. So I told my friends that I wanted to do a wine bar crawl in Portland. And so obviously that's what we did. And we hit 3 different wine bars throughout the course of the afternoon. And each of them had something unique or like their own kind of vibe, if you will, to offer to the experience. And it was just such a fun day to kind of like, a fun way to just kind of like, pass time. Again, when you're on vacation, you feel like you've got nowhere to be. And I think that's the best part because it's like, you're not checking your phone, you're not looking at your emails, you're not like dialing into meetings, you're doing whatever the fuck you want. So on this day of vacation, whatever the fuck I want was a wine bar crawl. So the first stop of the crawl was a place called Company. Now, this is a wine garage bar with sort of like an indoor-outdoor space. So this place was really cool. If you were to imagine kind of like a literal garage with like the doors open, the bar was inside and then they had like a patio of just kind of tables you could chill out outside. So definitely a good spot for like a warm weather day. This place, I would say definitely more of kind of like a wine by the glass situation. And they had some nice options. The menu is kind of like they've got a sparkling wine, they've got a rosé, they've got an orange, they've got a white, they've got a red. And you kind of just choose like what you prefer. But within all of those categories, I would say they had really nice selections. And so that was a really fun place to kind of start off the crawl, very chill, a little bit of afternoon sun. And then we were off to the second place, which was Nil. So Nil Wine Bar, this felt more of like it felt more bar-like in the sense that they have this like really gorgeous blue bar that kind of runs through the entire space. Everything else is very simple. But this one is also tied to a bottle shop on the other side. And so they have a lot of interesting, mostly natural wines by the bottle. And this was a fun place to split a bottle of wine with friends. I had a bottle of wine there that was so good, and it made me realize that I was drinking Mexican wine for like the first time to my knowledge. And I think that's so interesting because Mexico is written about, spoken about like a very up-and-coming wine area. But of course, it would be considered very New World in the sense that it's not traditionally a place that you see a lot of wine from. But we had a bottle of wine from Mexico that I wanted to share with you because it was really great. And it opened my eyes to just wanting to drink more Mexican wine. So the company is called Beilke. And they produce wines in Tecate, which is in Baja California, Mexico. And the wine, specifically the bottle that we had, was called their Pepe Nat, which is a sparkling rosé. I would say it's most similar to like a Lambrusco, like a really like a darker kind of pink reddish sparkling wine. Natural carbonation obviously happens within the bottle for those. But it was really tasty. And like I said, it just made me want to drink more Mexican wine. The label, the label for this bottle is actually wild. And in doing a little bit of research, they have like all of their labels are similar, but they have like a Mexican wrestler on this bottle. But like the outfit he's wearing is giving Borat. Like he's got his like, you know, little underwear like basically over his shoulders on the front side of the bottle. And then on the back side of the bottle, you can basically like see his butt. So like the label in and of itself, you know, a very entertaining experience. Definitely one that I will never forget. And I would be able to like immediately recognize it if I were to see it on a shelf somewhere, which I think is brilliant. But really fun experience, really cool bottle of wine, and definitely has kind of piqued my curiosity about trying more Mexican-made wines. So that was really fun. After our stop at Nil, we went to a third location on the wine bar crawl, and this was an event kind of put on in a different location. So this was called, it was an event put on by Grape Girls. And it took place in a place called Based General Store. And so this store seems to be like very kind of mixed use. Like they'll do events, they'll do different things. But this was really cool. It was a curated list of wines. They also had a chef making food. And if I'm being completely honest, by the third stop on our wine bar crawl, I wasn't really documenting the details, you know? But I can say that it was a really great vibe, really fun experience. And by the end of the wine bar crawl, like I felt so complete. Like I really felt like we had, you know, an experience of like 3 like different but also kind of similar wine bars. And all the wines that we were drinking were natural wines, like very minimal intervention, less, you know, chemicals, if you will. And so you feel better. You feel better at the end of it when you are drinking more natural wine. So that helped on the next day, let me tell you. But this was a really fun experience. Shout out to my friends for humoring me with this concept. And I thought it was super fun. So if you have an afternoon in Portland to just kind of like shoot the shit, like wine bar crawl. And I'm sure there's plenty of places that we didn't even hit. It could have been a weekend long situation if we wanted it to be. But really, really fun, great experience, and highly recommend. After the wine bar crawl, obviously needed some dinner. That night we went to dinner at a place called Phuket Cafe, and very traditional Thai restaurant, super cute. The restaurant itself had like gorgeous, like it felt like I was in a Wes Anderson film, like a seafoam green and pink and red. Like it was painted, decorated beautifully, and the food was really, really good. So we had some pad thai, we had some curry, we had some fried rice, everything you need to neutralize a wine bar crawl. And I highly recommend. My friends let me know that this place is owned by a group that does about 6 different Thai restaurants in the Portland area, and that all of the restaurants apparently are really good. So who doesn't love Thai food, honestly? Like, I feel like Thai food is always an easy win. And it was a crowd favorite, that's for sure. Now, when it comes to Sunday was a road trip day. So woke up in the morning, grabbed a coffee at Cafe Umbria, which is, shout out to my bestie, KJ recommended that spot. Really good coffee and really nice pastries. So started the morning there, which it happened to be like a block or two from the Heathman Hotel. So that was super nice and convenient. And then went on a day trip. So Hannah, my friend who lives in Portland, she was so kind as to pick me up and take me to the coast. Now, the coast is about an hour and a half drive from downtown Portland. So if this is something that you're interested in doing, definitely rent a car. And honestly, I highly recommend that you make the time to do this. It was absolutely stunning, so beautiful, and I'm so glad that we made it to the coast. So specifically, we went to Cannon Beach, and Cannon Beach is where you'll see like the very famous like Haystack Rock. And so I feel like 9 times out of 10, if you see a picture of like the coast of Oregon, look, I learned very quickly that if you say Oregon, you will be harassed. You'll be made fun of because according to the locals, it's Oregon. I'm still trying to break that habit, clearly. But I feel like 9 times out of 10, if you see a picture of the coast, you will see Haystack Rock. Very iconic visual. And if you were to Google it right now, you look at a picture, you're like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. But we went to Cannon Beach, and it was a really nice afternoon. We strolled the beach for quite a while. The Pacific Ocean was looking lovely. Beautiful blue skies. The air smelled so clean. And it was just like a nice kind of chill, like small beach town vibe. We walked around the town a little bit. They've got a lot of different shops to kind of look at. And then we had lunch at a place called Ekola Seafood. And this is maybe just like a block or two off of Cannon Beach. And they have incredible fish and chips. So really good seafood. They had a chowder. I didn't try it, but I've heard it's very good. All sorts of seafood, shrimp, crab. I recommend the fish and chips. Really, really nice, healthy portions. Really fresh, comes with fries, had a Coca-Cola. And honestly, that to me is like a perfect lunch. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to beat a good fish and chips and a Coke, especially after a day trip to the beach and strolling on it. So I really enjoyed this day. It was really nice just to get out in nature. Especially living in the city, I find myself craving nature more and more all the time. And I had never seen the coast there before, and it was just so gorgeous, like truly not overrated, if anything, underrated. Before we headed back to Portland, we drove a bit further south to a town called Manzanita. And here, or along the way, some really stunning lookout points. We're talking cliffside, ocean, bright blue skies, like really green, like pine trees, just like absolutely stunning nature views. And so driving down there gave us the time to like have a little bit more of like a lookout view situation. And then we stopped in the town of Manzanita for a little bit as well. I saw my first poppy flowers in real life, which was notable for me. Those big red flowers that like, I feel like when I was a kid, I used to see them just like, people used to wear those little like poppy pins, you know? I've literally never seen a poppy in real life until a couple weeks ago, and they were gorgeous, much larger than I was expecting. I don't know why. But again, just like really nice nature moment and incredible views. Also in this area is Tillamook, and Tillamook is a place, but also the brand that makes the really good cheese and ice cream. And if we had had a little bit more time, I would have liked to go to Tillamook, but I will live, you know? One of the things I realized that I was totally not in tune with while I was on the coast because I was posting my photos was apparently there is a movie called The Goonies where there's like a family that searches for treasure in this area. I had so many Instagram story replies about The Goonies and I was completely missing the reference like the whole time. So it has been brought to my attention that this is a piece of cinema that I was deprived of in my childhood. My personal theory upon further investigation is that it's due to the fact that it came out in 1985 and I'm a 90s kid, you know? That's what I'm going to go with, but I do now have it on my list to watch it after the fact because apparently it's an American classic. So that was the end of the day at the coast. Really lovely day trip. When we got back to Portland, topped off the weekend with a trip to an Italian restaurant. I feel like Italian is just like so comforting and filling that like it needs to happen everywhere you go. You know, like I don't care if you're near Portland, or if you're in New York City, if you're in London, like you have to have an Italian meal. You know, it's just one of those things. We went to a place called Ava Jean's. Named after me, maybe. I don't know. I walked in and I asked them, you know, if they were going to pay my stock dividends. And they kind of were like, what? What? It's like, my name's Ava. But this restaurant, farm to table, really incredible ingredients, really incredible dishes. All of the pastas were really good that I tried. And it was just like a really nice way to top off the weekend. My friends who have been to this restaurant in the past have also loved it. So if you're looking for Italian in Portland, I think Ava Jean's is a good move. Obviously, lots of options, but personally, I like them, you know? Same name, hard to go wrong. So that was a short, long weekend, if you will, in Portland, Oregon. And although my trip was cut short by a day, I do feel like overall I still had a decent amount of time. So I was hoping to have 4 days. I ended up with 3. Still was able to get in a trip to the coast, which was great. But overall, like a really, really great vibe. Everything was so leafy green. There's so many trees and the air smells so good. Like it's just so clean. Obviously, all the trees. Really great natural wine bars, restaurants. I really also liked the neighborhood vibe. It was kind of giving small town in certain moments, but in like a comforting way. And overall, I felt quite at home here. A lot of people compare Minneapolis to Portland, and I do see the similarities. In fact, my friend was like, would you ever move here? And I would, but I wouldn't because I literally just moved away from home, and this place felt honestly like very close to home for me. So I thought that was interesting. If you're considering a trip, like one of the big things I would definitely consider is the weather. So I visited in the summertime. It was nice, sunny, no rain. But Portland does have a big rainy season, mainly October through April. So the summer season, May to September, much less rain. And I feel like that's just like a more fun way to explore a city, you know, when you're like, it's just nice you don't have to deal with rain like that. But if you like the rainy vibe, you know, go any time of year. It doesn't matter. I would definitely recommend renting a car. And if you rent a car, it really doesn't matter where geographically you end up staying. Like, I feel like you'll need to be kind of bopping around a little bit regardless, just depending on where you want to be like hanging out, where you want to be eating, where you want to be drinking. So I would say the best way to do Portland is to rent a car and just stay anywhere that calls to you, you know? Like, don't be so so over calculated with the location of where you end up staying. Just get yourself a car and expect to be kind of like bopping around quite a bit. But just know that it's easy to get around. Driving seems very accessible. There's also a lot of biking. It's a big bike city. So if you do like to bike, that could be another option. But get a car. It would be easy. I'm very grateful that my friend had a car and she could help navigate me around. And yeah, like I said, with that, stay anywhere that you want. The Heathman was nice, not haunted, which we love. But just stay anywhere that calls to you. And lastly, definitely give yourself time to see the coast. I haven't seen so much natural beauty in a very long time, and I'm incredibly grateful that I was able to have that experience on the coast. And thank you, Hannah. Thank you so much for making my time in Portland truly a wonderful experience. It's always fun when you can go somewhere and hang out with friends, whether they live in a certain location or you're meeting up there. I do feel like as much as I love solo travel, I also really love travel experiences that you can share with others. So with that, I used to always rate my travel talks. Like I'd always rate my time in a city out of 10. I feel like I've been forgetting to do that recently, but we're going to bring it back. So overall, I would rate my time in Portland a 9 out of 10. Yes, that is very high. I do feel like that is the score it deserves, and I docked a point for the whole nightmare that was getting there. And next time, I will book the direct flight. So with that, if Portland is a city you've been considering, I highly recommend it. I think it's a great time. And if Portland wasn't on your list before, hopefully it is now. I think that's a fun thing about traveling to new places, exploring, and then kind of sharing the experience is we can always find something new to pique our interest, be inspired by, or just think about doing something new. So with that, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to rate 5 stars on Apple or Spotify. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe so you don't miss a video episode. And in the meantime, always remember to be more you. Listen to the More Pod every Wednesday as I share the things that make me more me and discover a thing or two to make you more you.